Okay, now let's see what do you mean by an initial value problem. Well, we have seen this before when we talked about first order linear differential equation. So what is an initial value problem? It's a problem in which a differential equation will be given to you and some initial condition will be given to you. Now for first order linear differential equation, one initial condition was sufficient. Why? Because the solution of this differential equation will contain only one arbitrary constant. And if I want to find that value of constant, one condition is sufficient. So therefore, for first order, this is called as an IVP, initial value problem. Now, how does an IVP looks like for a second order linear differential equation? So this is my second order linear differential equation, and here, like for first order, you had only one arbitrary constant in the general solution. We will see that for second order linear differential equation, you will have only two arbitrary constant in the general solution. Now if I want to find those two arbitrary constants, I will need two conditions to find those two constants. So therefore, for an second order linear differential equation, IVP will look like this: a differential equation along with two initial conditions. Y at some points x naught is taking the value k naught, and y prime means derivative of y at x naught takes the value k1. So this is an IVP for an second order linear differential equation. Now observe one thing, here my initial values are fixed. That's why this is called as an initial value problem. If these are changing, then such a thing is something called as boundary value problem, but we won't go into that. Initial means your initial points are fixed, and that's why here I have y of x naught and then I take the derivative. Question is, will the derivative exist? Yes, because y is the solution of this. That means double derivative also exists, and hence single derivative has to exist. So this is how an initial value problem will look like. For a second order, you will need two initial conditions to find the value of two arbitrary constants which will occur in the general solution. When you will have a third order linear differential equation, you will have three arbitrary constants in the general solution, and for that you will need three initial conditions. So IVP for third order will look like a differential equation and three initial conditions. So y at x naught is k naught, y dash at k naught x naught is k1, and y double dash. So for y double dash of x naught is k2. For third order, you will need three initial conditions. So that's how an IVP for third order will look like. And if you have nth order linear differential equation, you will need n initial conditions. So say y of x naught is k naught, y prime of x naught is k1 up to you take n minus 1th derivative at x naught is nothing but kn minus 1. So this whole thing will be called as an initial value problem for an nth order linear differential equation. And using these conditions, you will find your arbitrary constants which are involved in the general solution. And because of these initial conditions, initial value problem always have a unique solution because the constants becomes fixed. In general solution, constants are arbitrary. Using this condition, you will get a fixed value of the constant, and hence such the solutions are called as unique solutions. So IVP always has a unique solution. So these are examples on initial value problem. So if you see the first one, this is the second order linear differential equation. Since it's a second order, so its general solution will involve two arbitrary constants. Since we have two arbitrary constants, we will need two conditions, or we will need two values to find those constants. So therefore y of 0 is 1 and y dash of 0 is 2. We will use these conditions to find the value of arbitrary constant. So this is an initial value problem. This is another initial value problem because a differential equation is also given to you and initial conditions are also given to you. So this is a third order differential equation, and since it's a third order, we will be having three arbitrary constants, and therefore we will need three initial conditions. So this is how an initial value problem for third order differential equation will look like. This is how an initial value problem for a second order linear differential equation will look like. Let's get back to our linearity principle. What we proved over there, our superposition principle, that you take a second order. Let's first deal with second order. The same thing goes for higher order. Suppose if you have a second order linear homogeneous differential equation, and what is the script S? This is the collection of all functions which is the solution of this. That means your H will satisfy this differential equation when you replace your Y by H. So H is the solution of this differential equation, and what we proved is if you take two solutions, say H1 and H2, then what you proved, H1 plus H2 is also a solution and C times H1 is also a solution. I can combine these two conditions. Ultimately what you proved is this is a solution, right? This is what you proved. But if you want to separate the condition, this is scalar multiplication and this is addition. Now we know that collection of all functions forms a vector space. So this S will be a subset of all functions, because ultimately this is again a function. So I can treat this as a subset of collection of all functions. Now that forms a vector space. Question is whether this subset is a subspace or not. And how do you check whether something is a subspace? You check whether if you take two vectors from the set, you add them up. If the addition again falls into the same set, that's one thing. Then we say that it is closed under vector addition. You take a vector from the set, you take a scalar, you do this scalar multiplication. If this scalar multiplication again falls into the same set, we say that the set is closed under scalar multiplication. And if the set is closed under both vector addition as well as the scalar multiplication, then we call such a subset to be a subspace. Now because of the linearity principle, this set is a subspace because it is closed under addition as well as the scalar multiplication. Therefore this subset is a subspace. And whenever you have a subspace into the picture, you can always talk about the basis, you can always talk about the dimension. And this set S is called as the solution space. Why? Because it is a collection of all solution and it's a subspace, that's why space. So this set is called as a solution space, and it has a basis, it has a dimension, and one can prove that the dimension of S is nothing but 2 because of the second order. If you take a set of all functions which is the solution of a third order linear differential equation, then the same proof works, and in that case your dimension will be 3. And if you take functions which are solutions of nth order linear homogeneous differential equation, then its dimension will be n. So therefore the theory generalizes to nth dimension as well. So for nth order homogeneous linear differential equation, your solution space will have dimension n. And therefore how many vectors will be there in the basis? Dimension is nothing but number of vectors in the basis set. Now since the dimension is n, so therefore basis will have n elements. In this case dimension is 2, therefore the basis will have 2 elements, and that's what the next definition is, which is of basis set. So how do you define a basis set? It is a set which has, so I'm defining it for second order. So what is a basis set? If y1 and y2 are two linearly independent solutions of a second order linear homogeneous differential equation, then this set will be called as a basis set. So when you have a third order linear homogeneous differential equation, what will be the basis set? If y1, y2, y3 are three linearly independent solutions, then that y1, y2, y3 will be called as the basis set. For fourth order, if you have y1, y2, y3, y4 as four linearly independent solution functions, then those collection of those four functions will be called as the basis set. And the basis set for nth order homogeneous linear differential equation will have n linearly independent solution functions. So that is what the basis set is. At many places you will see directly as a definition that y1 and y2 are linearly independent, then it is a basis set. But then question is how this is coming into picture? Because of this linear algebra thing. Okay, so this is the connection of linear algebra with differential equation. And as soon as you have a basis set, you must have seen a theorem in linear algebra that any vector in a vector space can be written as linear combination of basis vectors. And that's what leads us to the general solution. So how do you define a general solution? If your y of x is any solution of this second order linear differential equation, then how this will look like? Any vector in a vector space is a linear combination of basis vectors. So for this, what are the basis vectors? Say y1 and y2. So your any y of x which is the solution of this differential equation will look like c1 y1 plus c2 y2, where y1 and y2 are basis, means they are linearly independent. Similarly, if you have a third order linear homogeneous differential equation, it will have three linearly independent functions in the basis set. And in that case, if you take any y of x, if y of x is any solution of that third order homogeneous linear differential equation, then how will this look like? This will look like this: c1 y1 plus c2 y2 plus c3 y3. So this is a very strong theorem of linear algebra which you can apply over here. It says that any solution has to be of this form. There won't be any ordinary solutions. Okay, so all will be the general solutions. So this is how one can bring in linear algebra into picture and one can conclude very nice things. Okay, now let's take this example, y double dash plus y equal to 0. You can check that sin x and cos x are the solution of this differential equation. Moreover, these two are linearly independent, right? Because sin x is not a multiple of cos x. You cannot multiply cos by some number and you can get sin x. Okay, so they are not multiple of each other, hence they are linearly independent. So therefore they form what? So therefore y1 and y2, this set will form a basis. So therefore, how does a general solution will look like? So by our previous theorem, you take any solution of this, say y of x. If y is any solution of this, then because of our theorem of linear algebra, this y of x has to be linear combination of y1 and y2. That means what? How your y of x will look like? It will look like linear combination of sin and cos. That means you take any function in the world, it will be the solution of this differential equation provided it is the linear combination of sin and cos. If it is not the linear combination of sin and cos, then it won't be a solution of this differential equation. Okay, so it's a very big thing. So there are infinitely many functions in the world. Obviously you can't keep on checking each and every function over here. So because of our theorem of linear algebra, it's guaranteed that you take any general solution of this, it has to be the linear combination of the basis vectors. So therefore this is the general solution of this differential equation. Well, as I am referring Kreyszig book, you will see this directly as a definition. So either you can treat them directly as a definition, but it's good to know that how these definitions are coming into picture, and that's because of the linear algebra. So I hope this is clear. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section. Thank you. Bye bye.